back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. This week has, I feel like, brought out some of the best radio that I've done in a long, long time. And I think anytime you lose someone of the magnitude and the stature of Muhammad Ali, and especially when I've been doing this almost 25 years now, I've created a lot of friends and a lot of places to go and a lot of perspective. Some of these folks are even older than I am. Ron Barr has been doing sports radio for 3 decades. He owns SportsByLineUSA and has been a long time the nightline of sports talk, as they like to say. Ron was doing it back before I started doing it 25 years ago, and we welcome him on, not just to talk about Muhammad Ali, but also just to talk about sports in general. Ron, it's always a pleasure, my friend. How's life out on the Best Coast, my man?
It is fine. The biggest decision I have these days is what color tennis shorts to wear each day.
And what color were they today?
They were brown.
Brown. Okay, we're going nice neutral color there.
Right.
A little different than a lot of the day glow we get out on the real tennis courts these days. All right, so you've been doing this forever, and I've been up to your library. I know you've interviewed some of the biggest names in sports. I've had this 25 years. I did some best of 2 weeks ago, and some of my favorite conversations. Give me your Ali stories, or do you have any at all? I mean, I would think if you sat down with Ali, you did something, right?
Yeah, well, not really. When I was doing sports on television, I did his second loss. And I don't know, do you remember who that was to?
Second loss of Ali?
Yeah.
Would that be Frazier? It wouldn't be Spinks.
No.
Keep going.
Ken Norton Sr.
Ken Norton, okay, sure.
It was Ken Norton Sr. It was back in 1975, and Norton broke Ali's jaw in the second round, and Ali continued to fight, and he lost a split decision to Ken Norton. But what was interesting was it was the first time that Ali had ever been hurt, and I'll never forget that after the fight was over with, I went behind the curtains, and of course everybody is screaming, yelling, and crying, and what are we going to do with Ali and everything? And that was a time when he was deeply involved with the Muslim faith. And a number of Muslims around because they were all wearing suits with bow ties, which was the dress of the day for the Muslim religion at that particular time. And I remember somebody reaching inside their jacket, and I thought, oh, God, they're going to pull out a gun, and we're going to have a gun battle right here. But it wasn't the case. They just did not know how to handle a situation in which Muhammad Ali had been hurt. He had his jaw wired shut for about 3 or 4 weeks after that. But that is one of the poignant stories that I remember about his career. And the other times I met him as a member of the media. And I will say this, he was always gracious. He would answer any questions. He was a guy that, as I think most people know, certainly could turn a phrase easily. And I think the other thing about him was that he was gracious, but he was a man of principle. And what he believed in, he really believed in it. And as the old cliche goes, he talked the talk and walked the walk. And I think that's about the best you could ever ask for anybody in life.
Well, and obviously the last 2 decades, really, I've called it Shakespearean, right? I mean, this guy that made his money with his fist and with his mouth had it all taken away from him and lived like that for almost a quarter of a century, but didn't live the way he lived in the 60s and 70s as a controversial figure, really lived as a hero, a living hero for standing up for the war, standing up for beliefs, standing up for race, standing up for your country. He was an Olympic champion. And even posthumously this week, I still have seen people that are angry about the war, angry that he didn't represent the country and go to war, and still the Frazier and the Uncle Tom and all of that, that is still part of the complexity of Muhammad Ali, right?
Yeah, I think you're right about that, but anybody that hates him because he didn't go to war, they ought to acknowledge the fact that he knew that there was a wrong. And I mean, his quote was, the Viet Cong did nothing to me. And so he has no interest in killing them. And I mean, so you're, like sheep supposedly supposed to blindly follow something that you don't believe in. I mean, I have a lot of respect for him for the fact that, I would have maybe done it a different way. I still believe people's individualism and their own code of morality and what they think is right and wrong should prevail over something which is dogma, and that's exactly what it was. I mean, you can think of Vietnam and how that war was, and then think about the war in Iraq which was the same thing. I mean, there was no justification for the war in Iraq. It was based on the fact that people said they had weapons of mass destruction. Well, that turned out to be a lie. And then the Tonkin Gulf incident, which was reported, which was the kind of trigger point on the escalation of the war in Vietnam, that turned out to be a lie as well. There was no attack on U.S. ships. So, when you think back about him in that particular way, the one thing I said in the interviews that I did talking about him yesterday was that he is truly the first trash talker in sports. Because I can't think of anybody before Muhammad Ali, can you?
Well, there was a humbleness that the Mickey Mantle had to have, and that all of the baseball players tried to have with their owners and the fans and selling tickets. The way to sell tickets was to pat the kids on the head and have a catch with a kid and make a kid love the game and make his dad want to come out and make him want your autograph and all of that. Ali really didn't care that he was unpopular and spoke up, and as you said, it really then went into trash talking. Ron Barr joining us here from SportsByLineUSA, I should say, for all these years and doing sports chats and taking a sports conversation a little deeper, which we hope to do here at WNST in my new format. Ron, when you think of Cosell and Ali and what you've done for a living, which is try to get the truth out of people, get their point of view, get their observation, play a little bit of the foil and the questionnaire, that really was sort of invented in the sports modern era by Cosell and Ali, and I think a lot of our expectations from what we wanted from an athlete to say something brash, different, interesting, controversial, meaningful, thoughtful, a lot of that really did come from Cosell and Ali, didn't it?
Well, it came from Ali primarily. Talking to Larry Holmes yesterday about it, he said he believed everything he said, and he said the other thing, Ron, you have to remember is the fact that boxing is an event that comes along and maybe once a year, maybe a couple of times a year, and the purpose is to sell tickets to the fight. And the best way to do that and create interest is by creating some type of entertainment or controversial value. And I think, he's absolutely right about that. He was a very smart person as well. Tim Shanahan was with me. He came out with a book, and it's somebody that you ought to get a hold of and have as a guest because he wrote the book. It just came out recently, Running with the Champ, my 40-year relationship with Muhammad Ali. And he was a white guy that accidentally started a friendship with Muhammad Ali. But it was fascinating talking to him about the aspects of Muhammad's life and the things that he did, the things that most people don't know that he did. And I asked him, I said, how difficult was it for him to departmentalize all the people that wanted a piece of Muhammad Ali? He said, the thing, and even Muhammad said this, was, I don't know how to say no. If somebody said, I'm opening a restaurant, will you come? Muhammad would say yes. I'm opening a car dealership. Muhammad would say yes. So it's fascinating as I talk to people that knew him on a personal basis, what he was like really outside of the ring. But he is somebody that certainly touched people. He knew how to touch people, and he was smart about it. And I never found him to be insincere in any way about the things that he said or that he wanted to do.
Ron, was he the most significant athlete in your mind? Not just of the 20th century, but a week ago, living on this planet right now, trying to measure him against the Jack Nicklaus's and the Arnold Palmers and the Tiger Woodses and the Magic Johnsons and the Michael Jordans and all of these incredible athletes we've had over the last half a century. I looked at Ali as the most famous man in the world for a large, large percentage of his lifetime.
Well, I don't go that far because invariably when people say, was this player the greatest player ever, you can't do that. It's generations, it's time periods that are different. And again, you have to remember, we're talking about sports here. We're talking about somebody with a specific value. In the sports world, dominant person, no doubt about it. But there are people that do other things that maybe you either don't hear about or if you do know about them, that they do something. And I don't think it's fair to demean what they do, even though you may not read about it or hear about it or see it every day, what they accomplish. And so, therefore, I tend to let people stand on their own merit. And I think I've never picked anybody who was the greatest. And I hate even that use of that word in the sports genre these days. So and so the greatest player. Well, based on what and when. So he was very significant, probably more so because most athletes are not socially conscious and are not socially active like Muhammad Ali was. And he also had to endure during a period of time when there was not a lot of tolerance in this country. Back in the 60s, black people could not drink out of fountains. They couldn't stay in the same hotels. I know Cat Grant said something to me once, great pitcher for the Minnesota Twins. And he said, when I was coming up through minor league baseball and we would play in New Orleans, he said the black players could not stay in the same hotel with our white teammates. So we had to go across the river and stay in Mississippi. Now, if you remember Cat Grant, he was not only an outstanding, he was one of what they called the 10 aces, the pitchers that won 20 games, but he also was a great musician. He was a very good musician. So he said to me, he said, it was bad that we couldn't stay with our teammates, but you know what was good, Ron? He said the black musicians who were playing in New Orleans couldn't stay in those hotels either. And so we had some damn good jam sessions at the hotel.
Well, at least something good came out of it. It's interesting you'd say you never call a guy the greatest. That's what Ali called himself now, isn't it? I mean, that's what he's known. I am the greatest.
Yeah, and I think that was partly self-promotion at a time where a guy that had been told you can't do this, you can't do that. I don't know. Do you know how his boxing career started?
No idea. I've read lots of stuff. I don't know a lot about the beginning of his career, or quite frankly, how he became such a literate man, and so well spoken throughout all of that. It really became a statesman to some degree.
Well, he was 12 years old in Louisville, and somebody stole his red bicycle.
I've heard this story. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Then you
tell
know
it
that,
by all means. Tell your version of it.
Yeah, well, no, he was about to beat up the kid, and a friend of his, or a man that he knew, who was a police officer, said, no. He said, don't beat him up. Let me take you to the club, and that's where he got into club boxing, and that's where he started his career. He's 12 years old at that time.
Well, it's been an unbelievable story. We've been telling so many tales here. Ron Barr joining us here, Sports Byline USA. You can look them up online, doing sports radio 24 hours a day at sportsbylineusa.com. You've had a pretty good run out there in the Bay Area where you live, right? I mean, the hockey team looks like they might not get it done, but the basketball team, it's been an interesting spring out in the Bay Area.
Well, it's been fun to watch the basketball team. I do know all of those guys, and it's interesting. I didn't see a lot of the Boston Celtics when they were playing, but I've been told that the Celtics were very much like what the Warriors are today as far as the closeness and the use of the entire roster. And I think if you take a look at game number 2, the best example of this team, their season, and also why they're up 2-0 over the Cleveland Cavaliers, is the play in the third quarter where Draymond Green was at the top of the key, got it, could have taken the open shot, did not pass it 3, 4, 5 times before it came back to him, and then he popped the 3 at the top of the key. And you look at the assists, Warriors are one of the top teams, if not the top team in the NBA in assists this season, and they've just changed the way the game is played. They forced Cleveland to come out of trying to play big guys because they couldn't match up and deal with the speed and the perimeter shooting. And so they've had to go small lineup, and they also don't have the experience to be able to do it on a level that the Warriors are doing it.
Ron, it's always great to catch up with you, and I must say, I was out on the Wikipedia page, and I know we had a mutual friend in Papa Joe Chevalier, correct?
Yep.
Well, we lost him. It's been 5 years now, on June 3rd. So last week, it's been 5 years. I wrote a memoriam for him at my website, and everyone at Sporting News Radio, where I worked at the turn of the century, loved him as well. And anytime I can slide his name into the show or do a little Bite Me Wednesday piece, I'm all for it, man. He was one of the good ones.
He was one of the good ones, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I'm glad to see you do that.
Well, I tell you what, it's always great to have you on. I'll give your love and hello to Brian Billick, our mutual partner and friend as well. We'll be watching all the stuff you're doing out there at Sports Byline USA. You can also follow them on Twitter at Sports Byline USA. The great Ron Barr, 1988 it all began for you, right? That's what I see on the web.
Yeah, see, you used the word great, and I would not put myself in that.
Well,
shame on you.
I did. When you've been around this long, my man, you must be doing something right, right?
That just means The long-living Ron Barr.
Take care of yourself and enjoy that parade for that basketball team of yours out there.
I will, Nestor. Take care.
You got it. Ron Barr joining us here, Sports Byline USA. He owns it, runs it, and you can go out to sportsbyline.com and learn more about what they do 24 hours a day, providing sports content. And so Ron, really the nightline of sports radio, took on topics and tackled them in the evening, and still does many evenings from 8 to 10 as well, live, and then 10 to 11 out on the tape. You can find me out in the Bahia Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear there. And, of course, our morning newspaper hits your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That is powered up by Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. And last but never least, the WNST tech service breaks all the news for you right on your phone. It's all brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis is going to be here on Thursday driving you home, getting you ready for the weekend. I'll be signing copies of Purple Rain 1 and 2 this Saturday in advance of Father's Day at Black Eyed Susan in Glendon, Maryland. You can learn more. Throw me an email, nasty@WNST.net. I'll get you up on that. I'll be there from 11:30 until 2 on Saturday. So come by, buy a book or two for your dad, make him happy. If he loves the Ravens, he'll love my books. They have happy endings. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.